Hey everyone, I'm Yukon, and welcome to this video on how to assemble your very own WOOF launch computer Arduino Uno shield. Before we begin, links to the board files, bills of material, and all the information you'll ever need are in detail below. Now let's begin. For parts, you will need the WOOF PCB board, 7 100 ohm resistors, 6 terminal blocks, 2 IRF 530 MOSFETs, 5-volt buzzer, SMD LED, and finally header pins. I'm not the best at soldering, so if you're new, there are many good tutorials by other people online. Let's begin by setting your soldering station to 350 degrees. While that's heating up, snap 5 header pins at a length of 6 pins, 5 more at a length of 8 pins. Next, we'll solder the servo and clamp outputs. I personally went for the servo output first, but it doesn't matter. Start from the inside and do not solder the next row of pins until you have completed the first row. Some masking tape really helps to hold the pin in place while you solder. I went ahead and finished all 3 rows and moved on to the clamps. Take your time and make sure every solder on each pin is consistent and even. Now that all servo and clamp pins are soldered, time to do the resistors. I like starting out with the 2 outer resistor ports first. Insert the resistors and position them till they're centered and tape them down. When you solder them, make sure not to leave the iron on too long, or else you can damage the resistors. Repeat the process for the row below. If there wasn't sufficient solder on the top, that's okay. I generally like to add a bit more solder on top of the board, just to make sure the resistors are in place more securely. Now that they're all in, snip off the resistor wire. Now we'll move on to the LED. Add a bead of solder on the top right LED solder pad and get your LED. Make sure the notch on the LED is in line with the dot printed on the silk screen. Carefully center the LED while heating the pad with the solder, verifying all the pads line up. Now carefully solder each pad, making sure no solder bridges the surface mount connections. The trick is to use very little solder. Time for the bigger components. We'll start with the buzzer. Insert the buzzer into the buzzer solder port, making sure the positive end of the buzzer is going into the hole marked with a plus on the silk screen. Do one more final check to verify the polarity is correct. Solder from below like all other components. It's MOSFET time. Grab your 2 MOSFETs and insert one of them into the MOSFET holes. Make sure the picture printed on the board matches the orientation of your MOSFET. Metal side facing toward the longer end of the board. Solder one pad first. MOSFETs are sensitive to heat, so do not heat the iron on the pad while soldering the MOSFET for more than 10 seconds at a time, or you may potentially damage the MOSFET. Now reheat the single pad and make adjustments till the MOSFET is straight. Solder the remaining pads and repeat for the other MOSFET. We're nearly done. Grab your remaining pins you snapped earlier, and if you have one handy, Arduino Uno. You can use tape if you do not have an Arduino Uno handy. Stick the pins into their respective holes while holding the WOOF board upside down, carefully pushing the Arduino Uno. For people who do not have an Arduino Uno handy, just use tape for this step. Now take your time and solder all the pins in place. Inspect every pin and make adjustments as necessary. Finally, it's time for the last component, the terminal block. Grab your 6 terminal blocks and connect them into pairs. Make sure they're in the correct orientation when you connect them. You should end up with 3 pairs. Insert the pairs into the pyro output, power input, and LED output. Solder them from the bottom of the board like every other component. And there you go, your board is done. There will be some residue from the rosin all over the board, but no worries, alcohol will easily wipe it off. I highly recommend you to clean the board once you're done. Anyway, I hope this video helped you solder your launch computer, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and happy soldering.